Welcome everyone to the Lewis Glunz Wines Tasting Hall and our Grand Wine Experience 2021, which we are having a great conclusion of our month of February. I can't believe the month is almost over. But to enjoy and welcome Chad Melville. Chad is second generation in his family business. And he's very new to Lewis Glunz Wines. And so welcome, Chad, and also to Bruno for joining us and presenting your wines today.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Abby and Stacy and everybody at Glunz for organizing this. This is really cool to be able to do something, still be able to kind of be in touch with everybody, taste wines together at the same time. So thanks for organizing this and doing it in such a fantastic job. Thank you also for taking on my family's winery. I mean, obviously we're new to the book. We're not new to Chicago. We're certainly not new to the wine industry either, but it's great to have some representation that's solid and also with another family business. Stacy and I met, I don't even know how long ago, 8 or 10 years ago. And we just met as just fellow wine enthusiasts, and we just kind of kept in touch over the years. And when it came time to kind of make a change for us in the marketplace, it was a pretty obvious choice. Stacy's a champion of Santa Rita Hills and also of Melville Winery in particular. So we're really excited about the future with you guys and together, our partnership and making this a successful endeavor for all of us. So I want to start off real quick with just giving a little background on the history of my family and basically kind of a little bit of intent of where the wines are coming from. So as Joe mentioned, I'm second generation. The first generation is still involved. He, is still my boss, my dad. I'm still his youngest son, even though I'm 50 years old. But nonetheless, he is the pathway for this whole operation, my career. He started growing grapes up in Calistoga in the mid 80s. He bought a vineyard that was kind of, like not necessarily falling apart, but it was barely surviving. It was planted in Napa Gamay, and we all know that Napa Gamay, well, at least now it is in vogue and it does command a little bit higher price. But back then it didn't, right? So the vineyard suffered. My dad bought it. He changed it over, grafted a Merlot, grafted a Cabernet. And Calistoga is ideal, hot days, cold nights, ideal for Bordeaux varietals. Sold all the fruit, didn't make any wine. But my dad really took it on as a business. He reinvested in the land. He went back to UC Davis. He hired one of the best vineyard consultants around. And my dad dug in deep. And his love of Pinot Noir, though, never left him. He was always, fascinated with that grape. I was lucky enough to grow up, in that side of the business in terms of farming, also in terms of always having good wine on the table, even though I was, junior high school, college. I wasn't like super, thrilled with wine. I mean, to me, it's just like my kids, they're like, it's sour, it's bitter, and that's what wine is to an underdeveloped palate, right? So, but I was exposed to it, and my dad taught me along the way, like, can you notice the difference between this and that? Okay, so I started early, and his love of Pinot Noir is what brought us to where we are now, which is 6.5 hours south of Calistoga, right on the coast of Central Coast. So right outside the little town of Lompoc, an hour north of Santa Barbara, is the Santa Rita Hills. My dad was lucky or fortuitous to find the land that we're on now, and also the fact that it was raw land, it wasn't planted. So it was a really cool opportunity to kind of start all over from scratch. And at that time, viticulture had come such a long way. Up until that point, viticulture was really about problem solving. It was never really about being proactive. And what changed was this mentality of, well, what if we harbor and nurture a healthier soil, which would then in turn give us a healthier vine, which then in turn would give us the ability for the vine to kind of fend for itself in a lot of ways, but also you could start manipulating the vines in a way where they could start producing, you know, a small amount of really intense fruit. So really what happened was this kind of, you know, the whole movement of viticulture, it changed. And it didn't just change in California or Santa Rita Hills or the United States, it changed around the world. You know, we went away from sprinkler irrigation to drip irrigation. We went away from just California sprawl trellis, if you call that a trellis, to like VSP, vertical shoot position. I mean, clones, the way we plant a vineyard in terms of its density. So it was a kind of a really unique time to be jumping in and starting all over, because we took advantage of the you know, clones that were available to the industry for the very first time ever, right? These Dijon clones of Pinot Noir, planted the vineyard very densely, put it all on vertical shoot position, you know, drip, irrigation, rootstock match to soil type to elevation, you know, sun exposure, all the stuff, right? It was really crazy and really fun to be involved. And that's when I got involved, was in 97. And my dad enlisted basically my brother and I and our vineyard crew to basically start planting. The intention was to grow and sell all the fruit. And that's because that's what we did up in Calistoga. That's what we were good at. And that's what we knew how to do, right? Obviously things changed along the way. Part of it was me. I went to business school in LA and University of Southern California, right, Bruno? And so I kind of drew up a little business plan. You know, my dad was in a really good mood, and we found an awesome winemaker, Greg Brewer, and it made sense. You know, start off slow with sales, sell the majority of the fruit. But you know, the main argument was, Dad, listen, if we really believe that we're growing some magical fruit and we're in this really special, unique area, you know, why not? Why not just take a little bit of it and make it into wine, and let's just see how it goes, you know? And so that's what we did. Started off pretty slowly with 500 cases total production in 1999. And then to this point now, we're at about 9,000 cases, but we don't sell any fruit anymore. We keep it all ourselves. But the main thing really to my dad, because he came from the farming side of this business and a real true belief, right, in that the magic is outside, that Mother Nature is creating the wine. It was really, really important to my dad before we even set foot on or in the direction of creating a winery or production for wine, was that we remain true to ourselves. You know, my dad's super old school, you know, a very humble man, and a belief in wine growing. And so when we found the right winemaker, Greg Brewer at the time, he's no longer with us. He left in 2015, but Greg had a strong belief in that as well. You know, is that the wine is created outside. It's all respect to Mother Nature, and allowing the wine to have its own voice was super important. And then the other thing was to be a state, right? My dad truly believed in that domain philosophy of Burgundy, right? You own your own land, you do your own farming. And it's not even just owning your land. It's really important that it's do your own farming. There's a lot of people that own land and they hire a vineyard company. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's actually nothing wrong with being a negociant either, right? But for my dad, it was about being a state, which meant also do your own farming. And again, that's what we knew how to do. So there was no reason for us to farm that out, so to speak, right? And then the other part was being organic. And this is back in the day when I think, you know, really organic was just kind of being thrown around. It was before really the term organic got hijacked, right? Because now you can buy something that's organic, like a box of cereal, and then you read the back label and it's like 95% organic. It's like, what does that mean? You know, like it's not organic. It's either you are or you aren't, right? So that was really important to my dad as well. I got involved in 97, planting the vines, and I've been in charge of the vineyard ever since. The growing side of it is really where my passion is. I find that the growing side of it it's fascinating, it's intriguing, it's challenging. I mean, it's all those things that makes me wake up early in the morning. It keeps me reading at night. Like it's walking the vineyards. It's that connection to Mother Nature, and specifically our land, and how that all works outside. I'm also the winemaker. I tend to kind of, shy away from that term, just because I don't believe I'm making the wine. I believe that I'm more of like the conduit, right? I'm just getting it from the fruit to the bottle without any manipulation. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the idea of truly being like a domain that is like old school traditional, right? That's my job. My job is to grow the best fruit we possibly can, and then don't mess it up. That's what my dad tells me all the time. He's like, don't fuck it up, right? So that's my job, right? I'm also heavily involved in the running of the business, and we don't have a lot of employees, and we certainly don't, have a big operation by any means. Got 120 acres planted, most of which is to Pinot Noir. Obviously, we have Chardonnay and Syrah too. But that keeps me busy enough. We're not interested in growing anymore. The business side of it is challenging enough, as you guys can imagine. So that's who we are. That's what we're doing. So keep that in mind. Really important. Estate, organic, and I'll get into the wine style here in a second. But it's just, if you keep those things in mind, and you kind of go back to, like, perhaps you guys have some really respected vignerons you have in Burgundy or in Rhone or in Chablis, or whatever it is. The ones that I really follow, the ones that I buy from, the ones that I'm fascinated by are the ones that do that kind of model. They grow their own fruit. They got one foot in the vineyard, one in the cellar. Minimal or no new oak usage at all. And when it comes to the reds, a lot of whole cluster. We're not trying, I'm not a cover band, right? I say that, like, with the deepest respect to the musicians, but I don't play anyone else's music. I just happen to believe in whole cluster. I happen to believe in neutral wood. I happen to believe in wine growing. As a matter of fact, where we start off between like Santa Rita Hills and, let's just say, Vaune Romani, I've got a good friend who grows out there. We start off in two different places. California's a lot of fruit. In Vaune Romani, there's barely any fruit. We're doing things, in my cellar to kind of subdue the fruit, and then he's doing things in his cellar to bring out more fruit. So it's not even a fair comparison. A lot of times people get that in their head, like, oh, are you trying to be Burgundy? Is that your goal? Is that your aim? And it's like, absolutely not. I'm proud California. I'm born and raised in California. I own land in California, and I'm a farmer in California. And I plant my flag in California. I'm proud of the producers in California. I just happen to like a different style than what California typically produces. And again, it's a style really that is reflective of the land and the climate that we have. So it's not really my style. It's the land, it's the climate that's really bringing out the style. So let's start off with Pinot Noir. The estate Pinot Noir is, let's block in. Anyways, the estate Pinot Noir is our main wine that we do. It equals almost, half of our total production. It's a really important wine. 65% of our vineyard is planted to Pinot. We have 17 different clones. We have 8 different rootstock combinations. We have soils that vary from, like a sandy loam, a sandy loam, to a loam, and then there's a little bit of clay. We have exposures that, are to the south, to the west. We have a little bit to the east. We have different elevations. In Santa Rita Hills, keep in mind that elevation isn't really a big factor. There are some differences in elevation, but we're not talking about big, differences. What we're talking about in Santa Rita Hills really is the proximity to the ocean, right? I didn't go over this, and I probably should, but I just assumed we were all on the same page. But Santa Rita Hills, one of the things that makes Santa Rita Hills so unique is that there's an east to west mountain range, and it goes straight to the Pacific Ocean. And for those of you that have been out here, even close, or even on Central California coast, we get this cold water current that comes all the way down from Alaska. It's freezing cold. It's 50, 55 degrees year round, a deep shelf right off the coast. And then you have this mountain range that runs east to west right to the ocean, right? So to In our area, we talk less about elevation. We talk more about how close you are to the ocean. You can be too close to the ocean and really struggle to get your fruit ripe. As a matter of fact, our western border of the AVA of Santa Rita Hills is 8.5 miles off of the ocean, right? So again, you can get too close, too windy, too cold, can't get your fruit ripe. So for us, you also get this really unique kind of winter time right now. I'm not at home right now. I'm in Montana, as Joe said, but like we're about to get bud break, which is, you know, the end of February, which is crazy. If you think about it, you know, that's not normal. Burgundy, Willamette Valley, Russian River, it's all a month and a half later than what we get. That doesn't make us better. It just makes us different, right? Our dormancy period is short, right? It's important that the vines go dormant. There's no doubt about it. But the fact that it's such a short period is really interesting because that means then the vines wake up early and yet we're still harvesting in September, October, and in the case of Syrah, November. So a really long hang time, right? Really cold growing season. You know, summertime is sunny, but it's like 72 degrees. Think about that. You guys have been to wine regions before all over the world, certainly in Northern Hemisphere. Like I have, and you know, during summer it's sunny, but it could be 95 degrees easily in Willamette Valley or Russian River or in Burgundy, right? Again, it doesn't make us better, it just makes us different, and that's the whole idea. So you get this, what we call refrigerated sunlight in summertime, and you get lots of natural acidity at harvest time with this kind of slow ripening. You know, you get what I think are optimal tannins as well. And then it also gives us the ability to ripen up our stems. Not everything ripens up the stem wise, and that's okay. I destem that stuff, but just kind of, you know, get that idea in your head. So when it comes time to picking for this wine, it's really fun. It's kind of like an orchestra, if you will. There's all these different clones and all these different picking parameters, you know, kind of lower bricks, totally destemmed. And then through, as harvest keeps continuing, there's a, you know, you get a little bit more ripeness. You get a little bit more ripeness in the stems and seeds and skins. And so I'll start incorporating some whole cluster. And then towards the end of Pinot Noir harvest, you know, I'm getting like the robust, you know, dark, rich Pinot Noir, and then 100% whole cluster, with the idea that all of those pickings come together to make this wine. So I look at it in these kind of chapters, if you will, right? I ferment everything in small 1.5 ton open top fermenters, stainless steel. So it's about 100 cases each, right? And on any given time, in any given harvest, I should say, I've got 120, 150 different 1.5 ton fermentations going on at Pinot Noir to make this up. It's a lot of work. It seems super laborious. A lot of my winemaking buddies think I'm stupid for doing it, but the reason why we do it is that's the best way to examine your vineyard. If you can break down your, you know, 75 acres of Pinot Noir into 140 different pieces every single year, and then it stays that way in barrel for up to 10 months, you can imagine how fun that is and how important it is to get to know all those little pieces, right? So I dissect the vineyard into all these pieces, and at the end of the day, I put it back together to make this one wine. But that allows us then to go out to the vineyard and do, you know, soil samples, do tissue analysis to understand like what's in the soil, what's in the vine, why isn't the vine pulling this up? You know, that's wine growing, right? Is paying attention to all the micro and macronutrients that are out there. You know, the vine requires certain nutrients at certain times of the year, so we want to make them available. And if you can get fruit that's not just clean and concentrated and, you know, the perfect yield, but also packed with these minerals, right? That's really where the difference is, I think, you know, paying attention to those little tiny details. We've all bitten into a peach before, right? Where it's juicy and it's ripe, it's soft, but it doesn't have flavor. Like, why not? Why not? Where did the flavor go? What happened here, right? And so I've been working with a soil consultant from day one. It's the only consultant that we have, and he doesn't really know great wine. He doesn't really know how to make wine, to be honest, but he knows soil, you know, and so we're working together, and we've been for the last 24 years. He's this old Japanese dude who is like just fascinating and full of knowledge and very spiritual and in tune to Mother Nature and the soil. So we pay attention to these little things, and I think that's one of the things that makes us different. Is
Hey,
that
Chad, let me
is that
let me interrupt if I can, give you an opportunity to grab a sip of water. But I'm going
yeah.
to share my screen here just quickly. Usually we do this to start, but I completely failed at that job here. But just one of the cool things that I like to do is just show people, very much to what you're talking about is to where you're coming from. And here we are. Let me just sneak into this. So you were talking about your soil and where things are. Here's the winery. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, it's cool.
So then we will sneak out here and kind of get a little bit of a perspective of the mountainside and where you are in relation to it. And obviously, when we scroll out of there, do you want to talk a little as to what we're looking at?
Yeah, so we're looking north, and then you're kind of sitting right now on the Santa Rita Hills. Now we're kind of, looking eastbound. So if you hold it right there for a second, Joe, just over those mountains right there, in the very, very background is the Mojave Desert. It's only 90 miles away from us, and the Mojave Desert is the hottest place in the United States, which is really interesting because behind us, behind view, only 9.5 miles is the cold Pacific Ocean. So you can imagine then, with all that heat coming off the Mojave Desert, it creates this kind of vacuum, right, going straight up, and then pulls off of where it's cold. So it gets really windy where we are, spring and summer. And that's what helps us kind of keep the temperatures low. So it's a really cool perspective right there. And now we're looking west. And you can kind of see that, I don't know if it's a fog bank or the ocean, but Randy, with the ocean is right there. It's hard to kind of tell from here, like where or how important the Santa Rita Hills are, or actually where the actual funnel is, where the Santa Rita Hills are. But off to the left where it says Melville Vineyards, you can kind of see those little hills right there, and then the hills to the right. It's not a great perspective, but it is still interesting though, nonetheless. Yeah. So anyways, thanks, Joe. That was cool. So anyways, that's the climate, right? The soils are ancient marine soils. You could tell from that thing that Joe just had up there, that they look light in color. It's a lot of diatomaceous earth, very, again, sandy loam, ancient marine soils, which is interesting because it's hard to grow anything in sand, right? It doesn't hold water. There's no nutrients, and so that's what we're really focusing on. A lot of our attention and energy, money, effort goes into really trying to build up the health of the soil. So we're cover cropping, we're adding, fish emulsion. I mean, we're doing a lot of really beneficial things to kind of relieve. That's a great perspective right there, to relieve a lot of the stress. But at the same time, Mother Nature is really providing a tremendously stressful kind of situation for the vines, right? Cold, windy, having well-drained, low nutrient soil. I would even argue that if we walked away from the vineyard, didn't irrigate it, didn't give it cover crop or do anything that we're doing to the vineyard, in 4 or 5 years, the vines would die. So it's really, kind of growing wine like on the edge, right? And so it's one of the reasons really why we believe so wholeheartedly in being organic. Like, why would we base our entire business model, the future of our business is on, literally, figuratively, on Mother Nature. And then if that's the case, then why would you do anything that disrespect her, right? So there's no chemicals of any sort. There's no herbicides, none of that bullshit. Like, it's not even a thought of ours, right? And so to say that we're organic, to say that we're sustainable, we do regenerative farming, absolutely. We do some biodynamic practices, but we're not certified in anything because that's not important to us. We don't want to constrict ourselves to a set of rules. We combination all of this stuff. Anyways, so the Pinot Noir, again, has got all 17 clones, all those different aspects. Again, picking it kind of earlier on with less bricks, with no stems, and then going all the way through the whole cluster. What this wine ends up as, whole cluster percentage wise, is 40%. So 40% of it was fermented with the stems. It's 100% neutral wood. The barrels that we use are, 15, 25-year-old French oak barrels, right? But by that point, the French part of the barrel is totally gone. Every part of the barrel is totally gone. You're not getting any oak aroma, flavor, or texture by design. I nothing wrong with new oak. I've got plenty of wine, in my own personal cellar that has new oak in it. But when you're really hardcore about, sending the message about being estate and really driving home this idea of wine growing, then it makes sense, right? To eliminate the ingredient of new wood. New wood is a beautiful thing, but it is an ingredient. It adds flavor, it adds aroma, it adds texture.
Segment of that spice box.
Yeah, and it's elegant, it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's attractive. People can associate with it. Absolutely, no doubt.
Chad, we do have a quick question coming in. Do you prefer working with certain clones over others of Pinot Noir?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just glad that I have 17, there's some years that there's some clones that kind of shine a little bit brighter than others, but then there's other years where others do. And so the idea is really, again, getting to know the vineyard, getting to know, the language that it's speaking, and then understanding that, and then understanding how to approach it during harvest. There are certain clones that are kind of more like standalone worthy, like 115 is a great example. It's a complete clone, but I don't really, if you think about it from a winemaker's perspective, my job really is to make a wine that is, stimulating, it's layered, it has a lot going on. And so if the idea of having all these different clones and kind of layering all the aromas and flavors and textures on top of each other, that's the huge bonus, right? So, that there are some that stand out, but I prefer to have all of them.
That's a great answer. I love it. Yeah, it definitely adds again to that spice box, the toolbox of being able to build that complexity in layers for sure.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
which one should we go hit next?
well, I just want to finish this one real quick.
Sorry.
The thing about the stems with this wine here is that the stems are really bringing out a lot of savoriness. So when you stick your nose in this wine, you get fruit, no doubt, but you also get this kind of tea-like aroma, this umami character. There's white pepper, there's, dried herb, dried sage. There's a lot of really interesting savory aromatics. There's even, a soy, oceanic kind of nori character as well. Obviously, those are all non-fruited aromas, and you do get like the pomegranate, like the cherry, the strawberry, the cranberry, like really ripe cranberry, which is really interesting. Those are the fruit sets, and then there's the savory set. So you get this unique balance. Keep in mind, though, that you don't have anything contributing from oak, right? The stems are helping kind of tuck the fruit in and then bringing out the savoriness, and that's how it works. And then on the mouth, you get this like bright acidity. Again, cold climate, lots of acid. And then you get this tannin, you get this little bit of grippiness that's there. And that tannin, of course, you're getting tannin from seed and getting it from skin. There's no doubt. All red wine has that, right? But the fact that you're getting this other tannin derived from stems is a different type of tannin, right? And that tannin is really helping kind of swipe away all of the mouth-watering acidity that's there, right? So it's a really unique combination. It's not typical, right? This is not a typical California Pinot Noir. It's not, big, rich, driven by fruit. It's more savory, more subdued. You got a lot of fruit, but a lot of savoriness that's there. And then you get bright acidity with a little grip of tannin too. So hopefully you dig that. It's certainly at a really good price. It gets really good media coverage. It's got some, it's a really special wine, right? And like I said before, it's a wine that is very challenging to make. It incorporates our entire vineyard and all those different pickings. So to me, it's fun to put together. Okay, so let's move on. If there's any questions about that wine, unmute or drop it into that chat box. But we'll move on to, let's see, we'll do Sandy's next. So within our vineyard, as you would imagine with 120 acres, or whatever, 100 acres, you have some sweet spots, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. It's just different. It speaks a slightly different language. Sandy's block is a 5-acre piece. It's in pure sand. It's actually named after my aunt, my only aunt, Sandy, my dad's sister. And it's 4 different clones. What's really speaking here is the sand element, right? I mean, this is when I planted this vineyard went in 98, and my brother and I were out there, digging in to the putting in the end posts, and we were fascinated by how easy it was to dig there. So we got the tractor out, and we started digging as deep as we could. And we dug about 6 feet deep, and it was just pure sand all the way down. And if you guys know this, no soil, there's always, soils are composed of just layers, like just the surface being rock or sand or whatever. It doesn't mean that that's the profile of the entire soil. 2 feet down could be clay, 2 feet down below that could be just pure rock or bedrock, whatever, right? So it's really rare to be able to dig all the way down 6 feet and just have it pure sand. We're fascinated by it. Now, obviously sand presents a lot of challenges, right? But what you get with sand, and I don't care what varietal it is, but it seems to be a little bit easier to see through the lens of Pinot Noir. You get this really bright, beautiful, like dried flower, potpourri aromatics. When you stick your nose in this wine, to me, it's all about like rose petals and like white pepper, white flowers even. There's a really unique kind of delicate, heightened element that's coming aromatically. There's definitely fruit again, but it's not dark, deep, rich fruit, The magic of this wine to me also is in the palate. It's bright with acidity, and then it has some really good grip too. You guys can see, when Grenache is planted in sand, it gives you the same kind of elements, not the same flavors, but the same lifted, pretty aromatics with a good acidity and some like sharp tannin that comes in as well. Again, keep in mind, this is, all of this is a neutral wood too. So I've eliminated the distraction here of new wood. Everything that you're smelling, everything that you're feeling and tasting here is coming directly from the vineyard. It's nothing that I've added. It's nothing that I've taken away. So it's a really cool mindset, to be able to really examine, smell, taste, understand wine without that distraction of new wood. And so that's what sand provides here. Yes, it's 4 different clones. Do the clones play a role? Absolutely, they play a role. But to me, it's lower on the list of factors of why this wine is unique and different than the other Pinot Noirs. But it is clone 459, 114, 828, and then the Calera clone that we got straight from Josh Jensen at the Calera Vineyard. And they're all different, but again, this is different because of the sand. It is also 50% whole cluster, but it's not that significantly different than the first Pinot Noir, and nor is it from the next Pinot Noir. So just know that, our whole cluster regime at the winery is no less than 40%, and then it goes up to 100%, but whole cluster is a really important part. Let's see, I think we got a beautiful red raspberry, ripe, but not overly. Yeah, totally, Elizabeth. Absolutely. That's what's kind of fun about sand. Again, it gives you that kind of brighter kind of red fruit, and then those really pretty like dried flowers. Any other questions about Sandy's before we move on to the next one? We good? So Sandy's is, because it's 5 acres, it's obviously, small production. It usually floats around 600-700 cases. It gets dipped in this wax here, and it goes under our small lot collection, right? It gives us a little emblem right there. So special wines, especially for those of you, that have like the estate Pinot Noir on your list, or by the glass or whatever, to have something else on your list. It's a little higher end, a little bit deeper understanding, like take your customer a little bit deeper in that world. This is certainly a fun one. And so is the next one as well, the Anna's.
There's a bit of a meatiness to it as well.
Yeah.
Kind of like you were mentioning tea, earlier. It's got kind of like almost a duck
Totally.
meatiness to it, which I think is awesome. I haven't had that ever.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, and I think that all the elements that we get in these wines, they're subtle. You know, it's not like they're not loud, you know, aromatics. They're not loud flavors, and that's kind of the idea here, right? Is that these wines are, all of them, including the Chardonnay and Syrah, like all of them are meant to be on the dinner table or lunch table to support the fruit, the food. It's not about taking away from. It's not about like, hey, check me out. It's about, hey, enjoy your meal. These wines are here to support it, right? And that's kind of the idea. I mean, that's really what wine is all about, anyways. Unless you're like Bruno, who drinks it for the breakfast table too, right, Bruno? Yeah.
Every day, baby, every day.
It'd go perfect with a nice pork sausage and sage. Sorry, I did.
Actually, is that does that meatiness that Joe mentioned? Does some of that come from stem inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is the stem inclusion. It's barrel aging on the lees the entire time in barrel in neutral wood without any SO2, and it allows those subtle aromatics and subtle flavors to shine, right? The more manipulation you do, the more you subdue those subtleties, right? And the idea is capture them, right? Not have layers on top of them. And so that's the goal, the intent behind the wine. Are the clones all planted together like a field blend, or are they in different blocks? And do you pick at the same time, co-ferment? So Nancy, it's not a field blend, but we do have, like, let's just say a 5-acre piece. And within that 5-acre piece, in this case, we have 4 different clones. They're kind of sectioned off in that 5-acre piece. So whatever, 12 rows of this, 15 rows of that. And occasionally we do co-ferment them, but we would dissect Sandy's block of 5 acres into probably 8 different pickings. And that's based off of ripeness, it's based off of stem, it's based off of seed and skin ripeness and flavors and aromas. It's never based off of really anything else. But by picking it 8 different times, it allows me to grab stuff, destemmed, a little bit brighter, more floral, and then I grab stuff a little bit riper, deeper, so that I can, envision in my head during harvest time what it's all going to come together like. But occasionally then we will co-ferment stuff, but normally the clones are not co-fermented. Normally we keep them totally separated so that we could really examine them as purely as possible throughout the élevage stage. So let's talk about Anna's. Anna's is a block that is from our other vineyard. I mean, it's still Melville Vineyard, but we have 3 pieces of 40 acres. It's all right there. It's not contiguous. But Anna's block comes from a pure like loam soil. So, take this Sandy's, think again, like those heightened aromatics, really pretty, really floral, and then bright acidity with some great tannin. The Anna's is darker fruit. It's smaller berry, a thicker skin. You get darker color. It's more robust. There's something else going on in Anna's that is definitely on the kind of more low rumble, right? Where Sandy's is a little high pitched, kind of the string section of the orchestra. Anna's delivers kind of on the bassier notes. Anna's is 60% whole cluster, again, not that significantly different than Sandy's. It's 2 clones, again, not that big of a deal. It's really the loam soil. What's happening there is you just get a smaller berry, and a smaller berry is a thicker skin. A thicker skin typically means a darker color, more robustness in the flavors and also in the texture. So when I stick my nose in here, I don't get as heightened and pretty. It's still beautiful. I mean, it's still Pinot Noir, but this one is has a little more strength to it. It's a little bit more muscular, but yet it's still really pretty and feminine at the same time, which is, to me, the fascinating thing about Pinot Noir. It's also, it's 5.5 acres. We do have a little sliver of Chardonnay in there. Obviously that does not go in here. So really the net of this Pinot Noir land is 4.5 acres. So again, small production. The alcohols are low, or whatever, medium, I should say. I don't care, it's irrelevant to me, but it's balanced, and that's the idea. And that's really where you're getting that kind of darker robustness is the loamy soil. I don't mean to like skip through this really fast, but I know that we're on a time limit here. So if everyone's cool, we could go on to the Syrah. The Syrah is.
I personally don't want to leave this Pinot Noir, but
well,
we can do that.
Don't let us stop you. Syrah here, Syrah in a cold climate is really fascinating, unique, and different. Obviously, the majority of Syrah is grown in a warm or hot climate. I know. I saw Joanna Breslin on here. She's an old friend that she's been a fan of the Syrah for a really long time. I don't see you, Joanna, but hi. When you grow Syrah in a cold climate, it really brings out a totally different set of aromas, flavors, and textures. It's fascinating. It's equally difficult to grow Syrah in a cold climate as it is Pinot Noir, which is probably the reason why you don't find a lot of cold climate Syrah. Now, I use the term cold, not cool, because there's a little bit more cool climate Syrah. There's very little cold climate Syrah out there. As a matter of fact, in Santa Rita Hills, there might only be like 40 acres total planted, and we have 18 of them, right? We're big fans of it, and we're big fans of it because of that really beautiful feminine white pepper, lavender, violet aromatics, along with the black olive and like kind of that asphalty and real strong minerality that's there. But again, you get acidity. Cold climate Syrah is going to deliver on the acid. Just because naturally, when you grow something in a cold climate, that's what you get. You get more acidity. You get more acidity that's retained. And then you get some tannin here, but it's not overtly tannic. This is not a Syrah that's going to beat you on top of the head. It's not a Syrah that's going to rip your mouth apart. Listen, when I first got into Syrah, I was a huge fan of Australian Shiraz, and I still am, really. I just don't drink it that often, but some of those wines in Australia are off the hook good. That Rockford basket press, if you guys have ever had that before, it's awesome. It's a bigger style, and when I drink that wine, I'm drinking it with food that's bigger too. It's like a louder food goes better with a louder wine. This wine is elegant. It's Syrah that is like, it makes you kind of rethink Syrah in a way. Yes, there's reminiscence of the Northern Rhone. Yes, I've heard Saint Joseph. I've even heard Cornas. Even I'm huge fans of both of those regions. But this is California. This is Santa Rita Hills. This is cold climate. This is neutral wood. This is 40% whole cluster. It's 8 clones. I mentioned it earlier on. Harvest times. We don't pick Syrah typically until the beginning or middle of November. Right? That's crazy. All my buddies are done with harvest by then, and we're just starting Syrah. It's almost like getting, if you guys are in the restaurant business, like getting a table of 10 at like 10 p.m. on a Saturday. It's like, okay, here we go again. Fire up the kitchen, let's get going. Like that's what Syrah is. But so there's a lot of risk involved, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. But like everything else with risk, then there's the potential for reward. And the reward here is this. It's the elegant feminine side. It's like taking Syrah and turning it down in volume. And now you can actually hear things that you couldn't hear before. And to me, I love elegant feminine wines. High acid, subtle flavors, heightened aromas. That's what I'm really into. And Santa Rita Hills definitely provides that. We got to keep the yields down. Syrah is prolific. It wants to produce a lot of fruit. So we're dropping at least half the fruit onto the ground. We're opening up the canopy aggressively. We're tweaking the irrigation to freak the vines out. Doing things all in favor of kind of tricking the vine to start ripening up its fruit early. And yet we're still not getting it until the middle of November. 30 days skin contact, 35 days skin contact. So that means oftentimes I'm not pressing off the Syrah until right before Christmas time, right? It's kind of crazy. Again, doesn't make us better. It just makes us different. Love the pepper, Nancy says. Yes, it's all pepper. It's even like Joe, you mentioned duck and the Pinot Noir. This is prosciutto. This has got like that really like fine, delicate cured meat aroma. And again, the pepper, absolutely.
Got a little Haight-Ashbury to it as well.
Ooh, I like that. Good call. Cool. Well, listen, I know we're
What does
running out.
that mean? What does hate Ashbury mean, Joe?
Ken, of anyone, you would know that, my friend. Just that little bit of patchouli, that natural kind of funkiness. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on in that aromatics for sure.
Thank you for
Attractive.
clearing that up for me. Cheers.
All right, so let's talk about Chardonnay. I like fishing with Chardonnay. Chardonnay in a cold climate, made in this kind of style. It's nice to kind of end on a bright note. It's lifted, it's pure, it's clean, it's mineral driven. Obviously, a lot of acidity, but then there's a lot of weight to it. Like this wine definitely anchors the lineup. Partly because of the concentrated fruit that's there. Like there's weightiness, but at the same time, it's got this really clean, acidic backbone. Chardonnay in the Santa Rita Hills is fascinating stuff. I think you guys are gonna hear more and more about it or taste more wines that kind of make you slightly rethink Chardonnay. Obviously, this is not the Chardonnay that's typical California. It's not big, rich, juicy, buttery, oaky. It's just the opposite. You know, it's got some Chablisian characteristics. It's got some Meursault characteristics, but really it's got, you know, that California characters, that sunlight here. Again, talking about this cold sunlight or refrigerated sunlight. For Chardonnay, it changes the varietal, right? You retain the acidity, but yet you get the right flavors. And again, with no new wood here, it's barrel fermented. There's no malolactic. There's no stirring. By the way, all of this is native yeast, right? All the wines are, right? So keep that in mind too. I skipped over that. I apologize. I know that's important for a lot of people out there. It certainly is for me, for us. So anyways, with this Chardonnay, when I stuck my nose in here, it's oceanic. Like there's a minerality, a salty brininess that's there. There's this really beautiful lifted white flowers like jasmine, and there's even some pepper elements. But then there's that minerality that's like kind of crushed rock and oyster shell and, you know, like a clean tide pool, you know, oceanic aroma. This wine really reminds me of what the soil smells like after it rains. You know, we're basically on like this beach sand. You know, if you guys think about the beach and you think about picking up sand and smelling it, it almost has like a slightly kind of smokiness to go along with that minerality that's there. There's a pineapple element to this wine. For me, is like ding, 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 that's California. But there's a lot of elements there that aren't necessarily California, but ironically, it's 100% California, 100% Santa Rita Hills, and 100% Melville. So hopefully, you know, one day we'll get to taste this blind and be like, what is that? What is that? Oh, that's Melville, that's Santa Rita Hills. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get to know the land and really represent the land as purely as possible. And one day soon, you know, we will be able to blind this wine or the wines that come, the Chardonnays that come out of Santa Rita, and kind of put all those together, right? I know that there has been, or there is, and there always probably will be, this kind of resistance to Chardonnay out there in this world, which is totally fucked up, because Chardonnay, I think, grown in a cold climate, especially like this, is magical. And I think it's our job, right, is to get people to see it that way. And so maybe there's an opportunity for you guys to just pour a little bit in a glass for someone and don't tell them what it is. And they're like, what is this? And be like, you tell me. And then when you tell them it's Chardonnay, you know, it blows their mind. And then they start rethinking, wait a minute, Chardonnay can be this? Yeah, it can be. And that's exactly what we've been doing for 24 years, is doing this style. It does not go through Mala because the pH is so low, because the acidity is so high. It's also because my cellar is so cold too, by design. I don't stir, you know, we don't inoculate. So it is what it is, right? And what it is this really kind of pure interpretation of what cold climate Chardonnay is in California, Santa Rita Hills. I know there's, oh cool, beautiful Chardonnay. Nancy, love the pepper. Which is your favorite vintage for Pinot in the last 10 years? I know, you know, Nancy, our climate here in Santa Rita Hills is, fortunately, it's fairly consistent and predictable. We don't have very much, you know, dramatic vintage variation. That was like a weird thing to say. But you get the point. We're so close to the ocean. It's the ocean that regulates us. Yes, where we see a difference in vintages is really about rain or lack of rain. But weather-wise, it's very consistent. Occasionally, we'll see a little wacky weather in fall with some heat spikes. But having said that, I would say, to be honest, 2010 was one of my favorites, and I don't know why. It just always sticks out. It was a very, very cold vintage, also very low yielding. But more recently, I would say this: the 2018s are like fabulous, fantastic. 17 was a little bit more savory. 18 seems to be it's definitely savory, but has a little bit more fruit substance to it. So I'm really into that. One of my favorite areas to visit. Can't wait to get back. Thank you. Really love hearing your passion, unique techniques. Wow, my kind of Cali Pinot's cool, Elizabeth. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We got a couple more minutes. Thank you guys all for being here and taking the time to do this. Again, thank you.
So Chad, there was a quick question in here. Does the Chardonnay spend a lot of time on the lees?
Yeah, a great question. Sorry for skipping over that, but absolutely all the wines do spend the entire time on lees without any SO2, right? So in the case of the Chardonnay, it's 10 months before it gets racked off. And because it doesn't go through malo, I do filter it. So there's the winemaking. The one thing I do to this wine is I filter it before bottling. Because I got to filter out the bacteria that would potentially take it through malo, and I wouldn't want that to take place in the bottle, and neither would you. So it's really important, Chardonnay, Syrah, Pinot Noir on the lees the whole time. Now, the reason why I point out without SO2 is because as soon as you add sulfites to wine, you stop maturing and you start aging. And it's really important for me that the wine ages, it matures on the lees the entire time barrel. Again, think about my tools that I have as a winemaker. I'm not using new wood. I'm not using yeast. I'm not stirring. I'm not heating up. I'm not using a lot of things, right? So what I am relying then on are the stems in the case of the reds, but also the lees. The lees are like the soul of the wine. Now, you got to have good, healthy, clean lees. How do you get that? You get it from good, healthy, clean farming, good, healthy, clean fruit. Then the lees become magical. A lot of winemakers take the wine off the lees early or don't even have any lees contact at all, mostly because the lees aren't good. Actually take these out of barrel and add it to other barrels. That's how big of a fan I am of lees. Now, as long as the lees are healthy and as long as your cellar is the right temperature and as long as you are a disciplined winemaker in terms of keeping it clean, then you go the distance, with that maturing on the lees. Anyway, so I'm a big fan of lees contact.
We are a fan of you being a fan of lees contact.
Oh,
Lees
cool.
contact, acidity management, and doing everything in the vineyard that you can, and not doing it in the winery. I think it's key. And I think that one of the things that we have really truly enjoyed most about your wine style and production is exactly that, and that old world tendency or style. You started out by saying that you're not a big fan of, people comparing, Burgundy and California, or Burgundy, California, Oregon, or anywhere else. And it's all different accents of the same language, right? And I think that one of the greatest things is how you can pay homage to tradition and keep yourself rooted in the soils that you're coming from. And I think you do that beautifully.
Thanks. Bruno, did I forget anything, or did I not mention something?
Chad, can I ask you a quick question? This is a bit of a weird aside. The more lees, the better for me. Did you say you were in Montana right now?
I am actually, yeah.
Well, this is the reason I ask, because a good friend of mine works at a resort in Montana, and he gave me a bottle of Melville Estate Pinot Noir for a gift over the summer. And
No way.
I'm curious if there's any connectivity there.
I don't know. What resort does he work at?
I don't know. His name's Scott Schaefer. I would have to look that up. I've never gone to visit.
Oh, yeah, I know Scott. He works at Paws Up.
Yeah. So my wife, I concur about great breakfast table wines. A
You
steak.
speak Bruno's language.
steak taco omelet and your wines are
That's because usually Mike's eating breakfast at about 2:00 in the afternoon.
if I turn the camera off, it's because I've just woken up and unpresentable, or I'm eating while I'm drinking the wines. But I just thought she said, I think Scott Schaefer gave us a bottle of this for our 27th anniversary gift. And I was like, I think he said he was in Montana. So
Yeah,
I had to
yeah.
ask. He's somebody who DJs at Delilah's and one of our great friends. So I just had to check.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
It couldn't
Very
be
small world.
coincidental. Yeah. So thank you and great job. I mean, these are killer.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
There's a certain sense of precision to these wines, and they really are alive. And I think people taste that. And certainly when we go through a presentation like this from Chad and learn about, the different vineyard blocks and how the vineyard is treated, and that's what creates the wines. I mean, that's what really puts these together and makes them such enjoyable beverages for people to have, whether it's in a store or at a restaurant. I met Chad because I worked for his distributor in California, and and I'm based in Northern California and didn't know that much about the Santa Rita Hills area until, I don't know, 8-10 years ago. And to me, it is the most interesting growing region in California. I mean, it really, really is. And and so much of it has to do with those east-west mountains. And I remember when I first started hearing about Santa Barbara County, people said, east-west mountains, east-west mountains. I go, what the heck is that all about? But when that wind comes howling through there in the afternoon, and in July, it's 72 degrees, it's really amazing. And the impact it has on the wines, I mean, it's really, really, really something to behold. So again, I'm really pleased to be involved with Chad and these wines. I think that there's a great story behind them. They offer a great value, and they check all the right boxes. So, thank you all.
Well, I'm going to not shut off the communication or conversation here, but I'm going to end the recording here. And before I do that, Chad, I want to thank you very much for participating today, especially since you are in a remote location. I'm very psyched that your technology held out. Way to go. And,
They have electricity out here,
that has not been the case in urban areas, much less in the far reaches of Montana. So thank you, Chad Melville, for joining us today. And